Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today, for a change, we are on my account, not on the press account, because this is my ship. This is the Tier 6 light cruiser in the Pan-Asian line. I believe it's called the Rahmat, and I do sincerely apologize if I got this wrong. I've had a quick look around, and that seemed to be the closest to it. So, Pan-Asian light cruisers. Basically scout cruisers in terms of role that they can take. Very, very squishy ships, and please, again, do excuse the noise outside. There's a construction site plus helicopters flying over, so yeah, it's a bit noisy around here, but what can you do? Anyway, this thing. So you're at Tier 6 and you're in something that's basically an oversized destroyer. And this is technically, or was supposed to be, a hypothetical Dido class light cruiser. Now, the Didos were British, and the initial idea with those was to fit the 133mm secondaries from the King George V design onto these. But the British were a bit short on guns, so generally the Didos ended up in various configurations. Some of them a couple of turrets short, or with different calibers. So this is a completely hypothetical made-up ship that was then hypothetically sold after the war to the Malaysian Navy, and has been used there. Now, there was an actual ship from the Malaysian Navy that was the Rahmat, although that was a frigate. And that thing eventually, after its end of service, became a museum ship until it sunk and was scrapped. So that's no longer a thing. But this is what we're looking at. And these ships were meant as carrier escorts, or just generally scouts, good AA ships, good against destroyers, that sort of thing. And that's pretty much what we're seeing in game here as well. So let's compare her a little bit to other ships around this corner. The one that obviously stands out is the Wang He on the Pan-Asian line. That is a Tier 6 premium that has been around since forever, and I actually happen to have one, so we can easily have a quick look. The Wang He does get the torpedo reload, but doesn't get the defensive AA and doesn't get the deep water torpedoes that the Rahmat gets. The hulls are very, very similar, and the maneuverability is quite similar as well, although the Wang He does have a slight edge here. And gun-wise, obviously the Wang He has 150mm guns, whereas the Rahmat only gets the 133s, although she does get 10 of them. So it's kind of like you could almost say it's a pocket Atlanta at Tier 6. Wang He's got the better range and in general better fire chance and everything with these guns. And obviously gets normal torpedoes, although the torpedoes on the Rahmat, despite being deep waters, are better. Now, is it a problem that these torpedoes are deep water torpedoes? Not so much, because you're not going to torpedo destroyers in this thing anyway. You don't have to. You've got 10 133mm guns that are very, very capable of dealing with destroyers the conventional way without the need to torpedoing the buggers. The AA is a tad better. And the concealment as well is a little bit better. But other than that, they are relatively similar ships. Now, if we are looking at the actual British line at Tier 6, we do find the Leanders. And the Leanders are a very, very different kind of beast. They do get regular smoke screens as well. But other than that, these are somewhat different ships. So if you're coming over from the British line, different guns. Definitely, and different guns. So for once, you actually get HE on the Pan-Asian line, whereas the British line is the AP only line. And the Leander wasn't bad. I quite enjoyed the ship actually, but it is sort of a very different ship. I don't think we actually have a Dido in the British tech tree. So yeah, there's that. Anyway, how have I set this ship up? Well, it's my personal account, so no, I'm not buying a historical camera for that thing, but if you were to do so, you would get torpedo range, torpedo speed, which is an interesting combo, max traverse and surface detection. All in all, very, very good values to have. So especially the surface detection is quite essential for a ship that is effectively a destroyer with a citadel and can be almost one-shot by same-tier battleships. And the improved maneuverability is good as well, and so is the torpedo range, because the torpedo range is technically above your concealment, but in practice you're going to be very hard-pressed to try and stealth torpedo in this thing. That said, there we are. You get the choice between AA damage and hit points, or I think what's the main difference here? I think the only difference here is speed versus ship hit points. And yes, this is a very squishy ship, so 2% of nothing is still nothing, and I'd much rather take the 3% speed, so I think that is the better choice here. Other than that, not really a surprise in anything. Main battery mod 2 for faster reload, and the concealment module instead of steering to give you more of an opportunity to disengage if you have to, although you do have the fuel smokes for that, so if you feel like you do need the faster rudder shift because you just get shot out of the water too quickly in this thing, then this is not a bad choice either. But generally, I personally prefer to play with concealment on these ships. And my commander is still relatively basic. It is much more of a destroyer setup that I'm running here. And I am not quite certain why I haven't taken the battlefield support for the additional defensive AA. Let me have a brief look, because this is only getting 2 consumables. How does that look in higher tiers? If we go up to the Jinan, yeah, the Jinan gets 4. That's why I haven't taken it. Yes, we do have sufficient, and I don't know where that starts, but effectively, yeah, in tier, starting in tier 8, we have 3 defensive AAs, and that is quite sufficient for. 5 I wouldn't be able to use. So for the highest tiers, it doesn't really make sense. And given that these things don't have any sonar, I personally prefer to have the torpedo alert for destroyer dogfights here. Okay. Yeah, that's, I think, what we can say about the ship. The Pan-Asian line is not easy to play because you think you're in a cruiser, but you really play a scout cruiser role, which is different from what you would normally do in a cruiser. So these things more play like oversized destroyers, and you have to be really, really careful with taking hits. That said, you do have, with all the modifications, I have a sub 7-second reload on the guns, and I've got 2 triple launches of torpedoes with a torpedo reload skill, so I can theoretically put 9 torpedoes into the water. And these are deep water torpedoes, they do some damage, and they have an okay range with 7.5 kilometers, and I've got the concealment before camo down to 6.7 kilometers. So destroyers running across these things are in for a nasty surprise. Right, let's get into some games and see how this thing turns out. The first round is a 5v5. We are top tier in base capture on Silent Shoal against New Mexico, König, Omaha, Königsberg, and T22. Now, the Rahmat is not necessarily straightforward to play. The one thing that you kind of have to realize is that getting shot at is very much not something that the ship can handle. Now, you've got several items in your disposal to deal with that sort of scenario. One of them is your concealment. The other is your fuel smoke, of which you have 2, which can allow you to disengage or to cover your turns. The last of it is the gun layout, because as you can see, these things actually have 3 super firing turrets forward. So if you're completely bow in, you actually get 3/5 of your firepower on target, which means you can, in a pinch, effectively do some completely bow in, ship in reverse gunnery sort of thing. But you can also just do the more traditional kiting setup. The maneuverability isn't grandiose, but it's not bad. And if you time your salvos carefully, you can make it happen. So we are running down the right flank from our perspective, just to check what's coming down there. If there's a destroyer, or otherwise we'll start farming on these battleships. And there is a New Mexico. So let's begin opening up, and that is a bot Fuso, so I'm reasonably certain that I'm not going to get targeted by that thing as of yet. But New Mexico is coming in a turn, so I'm going to use the fuel smoke to make sure he doesn't Oh, there's the T-22 as well, that he doesn't see me, or that at least he can't target me. And I'm just using my acceleration here to dodge that return fire. And yes, obviously I can't torpedo the T-22, but the New Mexico might run into a torpedo or two. Should have led a little bit more, but I don't think I had angles at that point. So he is flooding now. There come the T-22 torpedoes. Should have seen those coming, to be honest, but that's fine. I thought he didn't have range, but he might have had longer range than I had remembered. So New Mexico has just flooded and has just damage controlled and is now turning away. So it's time to stay at max range and try and set a fire. Although that T-22 over there is such an inviting target. Oh well. That's the dilemma of cruiser players. Do I farm battleships, or do I do something good for my team? And at the end of the day, it's just the team win that counts, isn't it? So the armor piercing on the 133s is not bad, and you should use it against destroyers, especially at close range. At longer ranges, high explosive can also be a decent choice, because again, it's only 133mm. It's technically a destroyer caliber on these guns. So right now we're chasing down the New Mexico, but the New Mexico is running away and has some company over here with the Königsberg and the König, and that's not a group that I'm going to be engaging in this ship alone, because yep, they hurt a lot. So let's drop some torpedoes on the König and then use the second fuel smoke to get the heck out of here. And chase down that T-22, which looks like he's making a break for our capture circle. So that is going to take priority. And I'm just going to sail away from the rest of these ships and hope that I can use my I can use my speed and maneuverability to ensure that I'm not getting blapped in the side or in the rear. Yeah, there's incoming fire from the rear. Definitely noticing that, but I think I've got the T-22 at this point. And there he goes. Okay, so that thing's done with. That leaves this bulk of ships on this side. I am running a little low on hit points, but it looks like the New Mexico is buggered off, but that König is awfully interested in getting me. And yes, you do have to be really, really careful. Ideally, I would have liked to be in a bow in reverse position, but kiting away will do the trick as well. And right now I'm just reversing to get him to overshoot the next salvo, because I should have enough time to get a speed in reverse going, and that that gets me undetected. So that gives me a chance to line up a torpedo shot once he's turned around, and obviously ships that aren't detected are no longer existing. But he's already turning back. Why are you turning back? Okay, dang it. These torpedoes are going to miss. I'll catch him with the next salvo. That's all right then. I thought he would have continued in that direction, but seems to be hell-bent on sinking me. So let's get out of here. And that's not a good position. I really should have turned a lot earlier here. And that's how quickly you get punished in these ships if you're not timing your turns correctly. And battleships can very, very much make quick and easy work of you. Although now that thing was flooding. However, I only have a 3% fire chance on these guns, so not the greatest. I am about to run out of map again. Common problem when I'm running away from things. But we'll see. It's only I think it's only a bot carrier, so no, it doesn't get a fire set on the König. So we'll try and do it ourselves. But yeah, the chances are very low, and König should be about reloaded. So we do have to make sure that even though I'm running into the map border now, I do have to make sure not to perform the turn just yet. Okay, that's one permafire. And just stay straight. Yep, this is fine. And now that the main guns have fired, I can turn and get out of here, and potentially try to get to go undetected. However, we're leading quite comprehensively, so I don't think if I'm going to go down that this is necessarily going to be a massive problem for my team. Still, we'll do our best not to. But König should be in torpedo range in a second, so he is kind of there going in a straight line, probably going in a slight turn towards the island, maybe. Okay, now I'm spotted, but I'm going to try and turn around. König really doesn't have anything else to shoot at, so the fire is going to come my way. There it comes. Yep. Second torpedo spread out. Is he running into the island? No. He's only taken one torpedo. Now I'm out of torpedoes. I might as well use the guns. The next salvo is going to take me down, even on an over-penetration from these main guns. But maybe I can set another fire and get a couple more torpedo shots in. But you see how dangerous these ships can be if they are if you're chasing them and just spamming torpedoes towards the rear. And but if you're playing them, you have to be really, really careful not to show your broadside anywhere. So just keep moving, keep turning, never sail in a straight line, because a single well-placed salvo from a battleship on a flat broadside can and will just delete you. So again, play more like in a destroyer, in a really large destroyer, and just keep maneuvering, even just a little bit, to throw off the incoming fire. The second game is a 4v4, and it's a carrier battle, and we're bottom tier. So we are fighting Domination New Dawn against Ranger, Fuso, Brooklyn, and Auba. No destroyers out here, but a carrier that we'll have to reckon with. You do have okay AA, it's nothing fancy really. So you're not a support cruiser per se, because if the carrier starts kind of funny ideas and targeting you, he can and will actually make short work of you. So I'm leaving it on the high explosive, no destroyers here, and I'm going to head straight for A cup. With a concealment build, playing for capture control is not a bad move in these ships, because they have the concealment to get in there pretty much the same time that destroyers get in there and not be spotted. And they have the firepower on the guns to make every destroyer regret their actions if they get there and find you. Okay, there's the Brooklyn and one bot Auba. So let's get a couple shots out at the Brooklyn. But then we'll slip in behind the island. You're not necessarily a fire starter, because 3% fire chance is very, very low. And the torpedoes and just general wearing down of enemies is a good way of going about it. Okay, that Auba seems to be going the other way, so we'll take on this bot. Now bots have two problems that you need to contest with. They randomize their ammunition choice, so even something like an Auba, which is a heavy cruiser, might actually end up firing armor piercing at you, which can get quite nasty. And they have magic torpedo dodging powers, so generally torpedoing them in anything. Yep, there came the armor piercing. Good that I was already turning away, otherwise it might have gotten a lot nastier. Unless you're torpedoing them from point blank range, it can be relatively difficult to actually hit them with torpedoes. So we've got a couple torpedoes in on that Auba, and now we've got sufficient range out that I think we can just finish her off. And don't be afraid of making use of your maneuverability, even while you're shooting. Just steer from left to right. The turret rotation isn't bad, and you can do things like this, like just dodge the incoming fire and be where it's not pointing. Okay, so that's the bot dealt with. That's capture A secured. We've got the Eindracht with us, and that bot Miyoko I'm not too concerned about. But let's work on the Brooklyn. And then we'll make our way towards the carrier, and see that we can. Hello, Mr. Brooklyn, and see that we can do something in that regard, and work together with the Eindracht to deal with things there. So it looks like there is a battleship in a relatively static position, somewhat guarding the carrier and doing long range gunnery. Brooklyn is running away from Eindracht's airstrike. And there is the other player Auba over there, but I have bigger problems. There is a Fuso straight ahead of me, so definitely do not turn to give any kind of broadside to that thing, because that player is not AFK. Yep, there comes the fire, and I'm gonna try. So I'm gonna get one torpedo launch in, and then use the fuel smoke to cover my turn. So fuel smoke up, dodge the incoming dive bombers, and single torpedo strike away. He gets lucky with the secondaries. But I'm going to complete my turn and get out of here. and wait to see what these torpedoes are doing, while that enemy Alba is coming our way as well. Should have used the defensive AA here, but you know, if you're busy keeping one eye on the minimap and the other eye on the incoming fire, yep, there it comes, then you forget these sort of things sometimes. Okay, he's now flooding, and I've used the second reload booster, and there's another torpedo spread coming in from me that looks pretty promising, because the Fuso is making no moves to avoid that. So if we get another flood, nope. Can we get a fire? Maybe. Not really. But the Eindracht is now moving up ahead, and is going to be taking on that Fuso, and looks like Fuso is now no longer interested in me, and there's nobody else who can really shoot at me. Okay, Eindracht finished off the Fuso. Nicely done. So given that Eindracht is already right next to the carrier, I can probably deal with the Alba and leave the carrier to the Eindracht to finish off, because that is only a bot Miyoko, and Alba might be able to take that thing down still. We appear to have lost our own carrier. I mean, we're good on points, but yeah. If I'm going to go after the carrier, I'm going to be relatively far out from the battle, and there's still a chance that Alba finishes off Miyoko and then captures the rest. Could maybe be an issue, but anyway. So Eindracht can take on the carrier. I'm just going to go ahead and deal with the player Alba over there, who has Miyoko problems and is just also at the receiving end of the fact that that bots sometimes fire armor piercing at you, and that hurt. So now it's just a matter of long-range gunnery against the Alba, getting all the guns on target and trying to finish that thing off, while it looks like Eindracht has dealt with the carrier. Nicely done. We've done our part here. We've used the torpedoes to yep, and you can dodge under incoming fire like that. We've used the torpedoes to soften up the Fuso sufficiently that Eindracht was able to finish it off, and then he was able to finish off the carrier on top of that, so we were really no longer needed there. Done our part. I kept the Alba out of B-Cup, and now it's just a matter of trying to hit him at long range and actually finishing that thing off. But that's again where the triple forward turrets come in quite handy, because even if you are giving chase, you are perfectly capable of getting 3 guns on target forward. Yeah, so the Rahmat is not an easy ship to play. You're at tier 6. You start really having to play the scout cruiser role, and the Pan-Asian line starts showing that no, you can't just derp around and drop torpedoes left and right, or just sail in straight lines. You have to be a little bit careful and really be aware of your surroundings, and which fights you can take and which fights you can't take. And I think it's a good segue into the higher tiers. And it's quite unusual for a playstyle to start showing that much already in tier 6. But I think this line is one that is becoming increasingly unforgiving towards mistakes as you go. And yeah, the tier 6 is already showing that. So play it like a really large destroyer. Never stand still. Never sail in a straight line. Always time the incoming fire. Always turn away. And make the best use you can of your torpedoes, of your fuel smokes, and all these things. And you can be quite successful in this little ship. And that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.